Welcome in to kick off the tip off with Noah and Gage, coming at you with some West Virginia Mountaineers football news. Big press conference today from Zach Alley and Rich Rod. So, looking in, we had some breaking news last night. Caught a little traction with Chad Scott departing the Mountaineers, and just want to see what that brings to the table for the Mountaineers. Gage, do you have anything there?
Yeah, WVU fashion, man. Big win basketball for uh, building the resume for March Madness. They beat Cincinnati, and literally 30 minutes after that, Chad Scott announces he's taking the running backs coaching job at Texas, and your mind just instantly starts to spin about Jaheim White and maybe a couple other guys that he was able to keep there for us. But I think we got some subtle hints as to what's going to happen from Coach Rich Rod today in his side of the interview.
So, looking into it, Gage, are you mad at Chad Scott for leaving, or what? How do you feel about his move? Because it's definitely not something you could say is a lateral move. I do think it's a step up in Texas class football, SEC football in itself, and he's proven that he can coach that position. So, are you upset with Scott for staying, or how do you feel about it?
Yeah, absolutely not upset. Wish him nothing but the best. I mean, the fact that uh, that Rich Rod retained him and he came back and I mean he wasn't even part of Rich Rod's staff. Obviously, I mean that was a Neil Brown guy, correct?
Yeah, he was. He came
So
from North Carolina, I believe, in Neil Brown's early years. I don't think it was the first year. I think it was the year after. But yes.
yeah, so the fact that he even stayed and kept that running back's job that Coach Rich Rod offered just speaks volume to him. And obviously some of the guys that came back, Jaheim being one of them, as to what kind of coach and man he is. So absolutely no bad blood for him. Wish him nothing but the best. Like you said, it's different if it's a lateral move, maybe a West Virginia to another Big 12 school or down or something crazy like that. But you're getting up to the SEC, so you can't fault him at all for that.
So without getting into Rich Rod or Alley yet, because we watched the pressers there a little bit ago, what do you think in Jaheim? Where is your mind at with Jaheim right now? Thinking in the sense of, will he stay? Do you think he's going to be a guy that spring comes around? We know he's nursing a knee right now. He had surgery on it in the offseason. Do you think this will be something that he parts ways with Rich Rod in Morgantown, or how do you feel about it, or do you have no feelings as of now?
So hopefully I'm able to edit the clip of actual Rich Rod talking into this. But Rich Rod kind of said this with a smile when he said it. I just have the direct quote. Roster may be looking a little different in May because of the portal, and kind of gave a little grin. And this was kind of right after the topic of Chad Scott came up. So I don't like where things are at as far as Jaheim. He's obviously coming off a little minor knee surgery. Had not been doing the basic kind of practices, the starting practices that they had. As you mentioned, spring practice starts next Tuesday, I believe. So I right now as a WVU fan, I'd say my panic meter is probably about a 7 or 8 out of 10. I truly think that come spring season, as of right now, I'm not sure we're going to be seeing Jaheim White in this backfield, Noah.
So looking at it from my perspective, Gates, just thinking of you've got Jadon Blue that's returning to Texas, Quatavion Wisner, who wasn't even those two weren't the starting backs to start the season. They actually had a guy in front of them. I don't remember the name.
CJ Baxter.
Yeah, so that hurt his knee. So just looking into it, I think that's something. If you're looking for some optimism as a Mountaineer fan, you're looking, man, maybe he doesn't go to Texas because that's three solid backs. Not that Jaheim couldn't compete in that room, because I think he could. I think he's a very explosive athlete. But I do think if Jaheim does transfer, I don't think it will be to Texas. I think that's going to shock some people. If he does decide to go to the portal, I don't think it will be at Texas because of what they have in their running back room currently.
I agree, and I really hope when it comes down to him making a decision about this, I hope he understands the potential and the numbers that he will be able to put up this spring in this offense if he chooses to stay. Because, like we mentioned in kind of our roster overview and breakdown, the guy already is going to be playing in the NFL, but after a year in this system, Noah, this could Richard can help his stock tremendously. The numbers he's going to put up here, and there's really, outside of Ty Edwards and JUCO back, it's his job. I mean, it's literally his job. Last year, go ahead.
And I think that's the thing to point out too, Gage, is Ty Edwards going to be a pivotal piece in the offense. I think there's going to be times where they do use him, but Rich Rod, we saw all the way back to Slayton days. Yeah, they have that running the quarterback that gets some runs here and there, but he's usually a one back stallion, right? Like he has that stud and he uses them and uses them, and that's what you saw last year with him at Jacksonville State. So just looking into what Jaheim could see, I mean, he could see 75% of the workload in that backfield with the other 10% going to Edwards and maybe another 10% going to the quarterback. So out of all runs coming out of that backfield, that's very possible that happens.
You hit it right on. This is what I was bringing up. Last year at Jacksonville State, his running back Trey Stewart, 278 carries, 1,638 yards, 25 touchdowns. Noah, he had basically a 6 yard per carry. Was just a true, like you mentioned, a true one back. I mean, they really had no other competitions for touches. Tyler Huff, their quarterback, was a featured runner in the offense, as well Nico or Jalen Henderson. But just looking at some of these games for Trey Harris, right? 24 carries, 21, 21, 27, 34, 22, 27. When Rich Rod finds his guy at running back, this scheme that he has opens up games where Trey Stewart this past year, 134 yards, 118, 210, 232. Yes, I know less competition, but the scheme's the scheme.
Yeah, and I agree with that in the sense of, you're playing lower competition, but still you're going out there. I mean, just say you run the ball 24 times. At least 6 of those times you probably got popped, right? So he definitely has that running back one that he's going to give the workload. Now, could you say at that lower competition, I don't want to say lower competition, but at the group of 5 level, is it going to be harder to find 3 quality, 2, 3, 4 quality backs that you can split carries up? Yeah, it's going to be a little bit tougher to find 4 solid guys or 2 solid guys in the sense of what we're thinking in Ty Edwards and Jaheim. It's going to be harder to find that many guys that you want to get the ball in their hands, such as why Stewart has that many carries. But even here, I think you might not see 24 or 26 carries from Jaheim, but I think average 16, 17 a game. I think that's a no question to me.
Absolutely. So let's actually dive into Coach Rich Rod's actual presser that he did today. I think he gave a lot of good insight and kind of hinted at some things without actually saying what he meant. He opened things up, Noah, pretty directly. He said lots of wide open competition at every position, and he said it, not a single returning starter on that defense. So damn near every spot is open for competition outside of, you would imagine, Jaheim White.
Yeah, I think that would be I think he said 9 to on the offensive side of the ball. I think he said
9 to
9 through
10.
10 spots open. So I'm thinking those 2 spots he's questioning his quarterback because you have 2 spots. You have 2 guys that are essentially battling for that position, and then the one was obviously Jaheim if he decides to stay. It'll be interesting to see a lot of these positions, the position battles go down, and I think that's going to be what almost pushes the Mountaineers to a higher limit, because even in the offseason, like when you have a team that's returning, when you're returning, say 7, 8 guys on that side of the ball, the guys behind them might not push the guys ahead of them as hard as, as far as they could. Whereas whenever you've got competition at every position, you're going to get the best out. I mean, iron sharpens iron. Like, we know that. So just really good to hit there that you don't know what you have, but there's going to be a lot of competition in the spring.
And he constantly said throughout the interview that the spring is not going to be fun. Those first few days are going to be brutal for those guys. Just you could kind of tell and get a sense of who he is and how he coaches. He definitely has a old school mentality to him where he's going to rip his guys until they understand his scheme and what's going on. So he said competition isn't a bad thing. And you kind of mentioned it, right? He said too, just going through their drills and some of the stuff that they've been able to do, he said their version of playing hard and my version of playing hard aren't quite matched up yet. And once again, had a little smile on his face. So he definitely wasn't pleased to say as far as where things are, but obviously, I mean, it's just so early, and they haven't even had their
I think
spring
that's
practices yet.
I think that's exactly like where he even said in the press conference multiple times that the first spring's the roughest because it's not like you're teaching guys your whole culture. Like the culture hasn't been made, and that's what's being created right now. These are the stepping stones of what it takes and things that you expect. Maybe a guy that's been in your program 2 or 3 years, you expect him to understand things when you're going through them. Like you don't have to explain it twice. Right now, you're probably at the point like, look, we're glad you're trying hard, but this is what you want. This is what we need out of this drill, or this is what we need if you play this position.
Yeah, he even said, the 6 or 7 Jacksonville State guys that are coming over from his last program, they have to prove themselves all over again too. So just nothing is being given, which I like from that. People are going to be earning their spots, man, and seems places there's positions open all over the field.
So one thing I want to point out with Rich Rod in the from what he said in the presser, he talks about the spring schedule being influenced by the spring portal because depending on what happens in your spring practices, that's going to let guys know. Like he even hit on there. There's 100. The roster has been what they think is going to be 105 players. Where currently, I believe it's stood at 110 or 115 right in there. So there's going to be some cuts need to be made on his side. And I think Rich Rod's a guy that if he knows a guy's going to be third on his depth chart here or fourth, fourth on the depth chart, maybe he doesn't want to retain those players because if they're senior, junior, and they're on that depth chart a little bit farther back, he's able to move on from them and maybe bring in some younger talent that can afford to set a year. So I think the spring portal will be very important for the Mountaineers because there are questionable players like Jaheim, but there's also players that are looking at themselves now and saying, "Oh man, maybe I need to go ahead and get out of here because the guys in front of me are better." And this will also allow the Mountaineers to address positions where, oh man, maybe we're not as strong as we thought we were at this position, so we should go get something like that. We should go get one of these players in the portal that we need.
And I don't want to jump ahead into the Zach Alley portion of his interview, but he was kind of asked a similar question about this upcoming spring portal. Are you guys going to be active? Is there a certain position that you might go out and grab a guy? And he kind of didn't necessarily identify one position where, yeah, we're going to go get a guy here out of the portal. But he was like, we're always active. We're always looking. So it's just the nature of college football now. Guys can get up and leave at any point they want, and vice versa, that teams can go out and bring guys in at any point. So it'll be interesting to see how active they are, if maybe they realize after the spring practices that there's a piece or something that they need and something pops up in the portal and we could be talking about a fresh face come spring.
Oh, yeah, and depending on, as you said, like what you want to run schematically, if maybe a 4-front or a 3-front on the defensive side of the football, maybe you want to go more 4-front, and then that's going to say, okay, well, if we're going to go 4-front, we need at least 5 or 6 guys we can rotate up the interior of the defensive line, or 4, on the exterior of the defensive line. It allows for, depending on personnel that you have that you might want to work for rather than against, like you want to put them in better positions. This will allow them to soak to see what that personnel is going to be and what scheme is going to fit them the best.
One last thing with the Coach Rod portion, I keep calling him Coach Rod, and I feel like people get upset with me because Rod West, who went to Marshall, was also part of the staff. But Coach Rich Rod, one of the positives I thought of his portion of his interview, he had pretty positive things to say about the quarterback room. Noah, he praised Nico. He talked about he mentioned, watched some of the games of Garrett, thought he was good talent, but praised Nico in terms of the games that he played and liked what he saw. I don't think he necessarily said Jalen Henderson's name in the press conference, but he said overall that he felt they were in pretty good shape in the quarterback room, and it kind of comes into the 11-on-11 setting in the spring practices where they're able to see more of football evaluation instead of the drills and combine stuff that they're kind of doing right now.
I was actually going to bring that up just to quote so the listeners know. Head coach Rich Rodriguez says he feels comfortable with the talent and depth at QB. He said he really liked what he saw when he watched Nico Markiel in games last season. He also called his offense a QB-centric system and feels it will protect whoever is under center. So that's kind of looking at the debate of, do you want Jalen? Do you want Nico? I think that, in my opinion, it kind of favors Nico in the sense of, okay, he watched Nico and he was impressed with the tape he saw on Nico. So I think that favors Nico a little bit going in, where he also said that kind of goes against what I'm saying here is that you don't know these guys until you get them into 11-on-11 simulations. Like
Setting.
if you're not you're not going to be able to look at somebody and say, okay, he's really fast, or okay, he's not in drills, because when
it's just not a game environment.
Exactly. So
he talked about Tyler Huff, who it wasn't until Louisville when he came in and was running guys over and making people miss, and then he was their starting quarterback the rest of the way from that point on.
And even
shout out Tyler
Pat White.
Yeah, shout out Tyler Huff, former Furman legend. Shout out Garrett Ballmer as well.
Yes, sir.
The teammate
yes, sir.
down there in Furman. So, but anything else that you want to talk about on Coach Rich Rod's interview portion before we get into Zach Allen?
Just the one thing I did take from it was just the totally different mindset of what the previous coaching tenure wanted to do, and this coaching tenure I thought and quote, Rich Rodriguez speaks on watching film of last year's. He said he watched pieces of the Pit, but then he quote, and I quote, "I watched some of Texas Tech until I threw up." So what do you think about that? And what is Rich Rod saying in that?
Subtle shade, I think, more so at the players more than Neil Brown, and maybe it was just the combination of both, but it was a soft program. It was soft players, soft coaches, soft coordinators, and that's not the way things are now. This is a completely different team, starting from the top with Coach Rich Rod and his staff that he's built. That stuff, and he's, like I said about their version of playing hard isn't matched up with mine. These guys it's going to be a true eye-opener for some of these guys. This isn't going to be patty cake all the way into the season, and then we're going to get our ass kicked by Texas Tech by 100 points. That shit doesn't fly with Coach Rich Rod.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, even going back and obviously watch Texas Tech versus West Virginia live, and just effort on the field by the players. And I think that's something that Rich Rod will drive home while he's here. Like, we're going to play hard. If we're not good, if we're the worst roster in the Big 12, it does not matter, because we will play hard. And I think that's something that Rich Rod's going to stand on, is he's going to take these players, maybe they're not the most talented, maybe they're not this, or they could be the best roster. We don't know. We haven't saw them on the field yet. But no matter what, I think he's going to vouch that says, this team's going to play harder than any other team they play against.
Well, and he got to see firsthand the bowl game that they lost to Memphis. So he obviously wasn't too pleased with the games that he's watched, and that's hints as to why there's a complete roster turnover and a lot of new faces on the team. He doesn't want that culture in there anymore. It's going to be a new culture, hard edge. I mean, it's really what he praises and what he teaches. That's what he's trying to get across to the fans.
Exactly. Just a tweener here, Gage. I think this is a good place to split the segment here. Rodriguez mentioned that his phone has been blowing up for that running back coach job. Anybody in mind from your side of things? I know it's really early in, obviously, the search. Do you have anybody that you want to go out and get? Or
Yeah, I don't think a specific name comes to my mind. I obviously saw where people were the Steve Slayton tab, but I'm glad they got Pat White. Noel Devine in his role is good, but I think an established coach. No, I'm sure you've thought about this a little bit more than me, but an established coach, in my eyes, is what's best for that spot. Somebody who has good experience at a previous school.
Yeah, that's what I agree. I agree with, and I hope. I've been kind of thinking about it back and forth.
Well, he said, not to cut you off, but he said, this isn't nostalgia. He wasn't hired here for nostalgia. He's here to win games. So that's in his mind when he's putting his staff together. Just because he's bringing Pat White back, he's bringing Noel Devine back. This wasn't to just please fans or things like that. He legitimately believes that these guys can help him and the team win games.
Yeah, so I think what you're going to see here is Rich Rod go back to his roots and someone he knows at the running back position. And I think you'll see Rod McDowell hired from Jacksonville State. That was their running back coach. I think just familiar face in the program, and he knows what Rich Rod wants at the running back position. That's just there's no traction on that yet. I just think when you saw his previous hires in the portal, not in the portal, but in the offseason when he likes guys that he knows. I don't think he wants to go out and find somebody. He's not going to go try and poach a big RB coach where he has to pay them millions of dollars. You could give this guy, you might be able to give this McDowell $500,000 a year, and he'll be like, oh my gosh, I never thought I'd make that much, because I believe when they retained Chad Scott, I believe they gave him a little bit bigger of a bump salary wise. So looking at, you might be able to get
and then Texas came in and probably doubled that.
Yeah. So
some things you can't compete with.
I think if you go get a guy like McDowell who knows your system rather than looking for the big name or the best coach, I think that will do them a lot.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that. Rod McDowell, I'm looking right here, spent some time on that Clemson staff as well. So a well-known name, kind of fits what I just said. Some coaching experience prior at a big school, Clemson, and then running backs coach at Jacksonville State. So I definitely like that.
Transitioning to the defense side of the ball, Gage, we heard from Zach Alley in the presser. Something interesting I thought. You texted me after watching the videos, and you were more intrigued with Rich Rod's presser, where I kind of thought Zach Alley was interesting, just in the sense we haven't heard from Zach Alley yet, and this was his first time getting in front of the media for Mountaineer fans just to see what he's about and kind of what his defensive morals are, and explaining to us what his philosophy is behind the game.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was Zach Alley or Tom Cruise up there with his slick back hair and shaved beard. But yeah, I think Rich Rod gave more insight to a team overall, kind of where they were in terms of the coaching staff, what he was expecting come these spring practices. But Zach Alley kind of went more in depth of what he demands from this defense this upcoming season, in a complete, like Rich Rod mentioned, complete overhaul of the defense. Like they're really, he said all 11 spots are up for grabs. So I think what I liked from Zach Alley was how he went direct into it. First thing he really started off with, Noah, he said they're going to be playing a diverse, aggressive scheme. Sometimes with four down front, three down front, three safeties, two safeties, one safety. So just throwing a little bit of everything in a conference where I think that can be pretty beneficial if done right.
Yeah, just looking at what Zach Alley said in the presser today, I thought a very interesting statistic he provided us was whenever Oklahoma was in the Big 12, they saw over 400 more pass attempts in conference play than in the SEC, and just averaging out in the conference play games, that's about 50 more passes a game. And that's really interesting to see the different type of philosophy you have to have, where I kind of think this benefits Alley in the Big 12. The defensive scheme and what he likes to do is, bring foreign blitzes, foreign pressures that people aren't used to seeing. I think a league where somebody really enjoys bringing pressure like Zach Alley, I think that benefits him in defensive play calling.
He was pretty spot on because let's be honest, in the Big 12, your secondary is going to get tested every single week. These guys love to throw the ball in the Big 12, and it's going to be no different this upcoming year. So yeah, he really touched on the fact that if the quarterback has no time to throw, it doesn't really matter what they scheme up. He really talked about, Noah, if your edge rushers and your corners are good, your defense in general has a chance to be really good.
Yeah, I think he made that point of emphasis of protecting the boundary, and I think that's what he did. He pointed out that defensive ends are going to be a huge point of emphasis in the game plan, because like you said, no matter if a safety gets beat deep, a corner gets beat on one play, it's hard to throw the ball or get time to read the field whenever a defensive end's in your face. And I think that's what he wants to do, and I think that's why adding Robinson from UTSA was huge for them in the defense. Not that he went into any players today, but just his mindset going into the season. It was very interesting, and how he what he plans to do, or what he said he plans to do in the season with personnel wise.
And then another position he really mentioned was linebackers. No, he said today in his press conference that straight up he tells his linebackers, "I demand the most out of you guys. You are the leader of this defense. You know, being able to check defensive linemen, safeties, making sure everybody's in the right spot." He said he holds them to a higher standard. So, you know, thinking of our linebacking core right now, I think of who they brought in: Chase Wilson from Colorado State. I believe Ben Cutter is a returning player from last year. They brought in a freshman from North Carolina. So I wonder, you know, from a fan perspective, you could probably say that might be one of the weakest parts of our defense. So I wonder in this upcoming portal if maybe that's a position where if a really good player pops up, they make a run for him.
Yeah, it's something he made of emphasis there. All good teams he's been a part of has had strong linebacker play. Thinking more into what college football has become with the coach to player headset, right? That's huge in knowing that you have a backer that can, you know, kind of tell the safeties, tell the corners, tell these guys, you know, this is what we're looking to do. This is the scheme we're trying. This is what we want. Whenever he's relaying the message to that backer on the field, he has to be in control of all things.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I did take away from what he was talking about, you know, being under Coach Venables, he really said that Coach Venables pressed the mentality of defense to his players. And I think that's something that he's going to push onto the players this year. You have to have this certain mentality to play defense. I think you're no longer going to see this soft rollover. We're okay with maybe giving up 20-yard plays. That's not going to fly anymore with Zach Alley at defensive coordinator. I think his biggest thing moving forward right now, where we're at with the I know they haven't really saw 11 on 11 stuff like that in practice, but finding the right guys to put in the right spots to fit his scheme. Who's going to be where to make the play? That's really what he's concerned with right now.
Yeah, in something that I thought was very interesting when he started talking was the reason why he came here. He pretty much said he loves Rich Rod. You know, Venables was like kind of like a father figure to him at Clemson, showing him the ropes in things. But when he got to work with Rich Rod down at ULMN and Jacksonville State, he said that he really loved Rich Rod. He grew to love how he coached the game, and he felt
how he treats his guys.
Exactly, and he's able to make his own calls. Where, like I said, he was a co-defensive coordinator. We spoke about this in a couple other videos. He's a co-defensive coordinator at Oklahoma. He's not getting to call his own shots, where I feel like he kind of has free reins here with Rich Rod because Rich Rod's going to focus on the offensive side of the ball. Not saying that Rich Rod isn't going to game manage a little bit in situations, but pretty much, you know, most of all the, you know, schemes and everything are going to be directly from Zach Alley. Another thing, just going into it, he's prepared. He kind of seems like Rich Rod is preparing Zach Alley to be a head coach. Like, that is what he wants for Zach Alley. So I like. Previously, we haven't had defensive coordinators that have aspired to, like Jordan Leslie. There's no one that wants Jordan Leslie to be a head coach in college football, right? Nobody wants that.
I want to say last defensive coordinator for us to move on to be a head coach was Tony Gibson, correct?
I believe so, and that's Tony Gibson just became head coach this year because he went to North Carolina State kind of as a lateral move after the Holgorsen departure. So seems to be, I mean, I think Tony Gibson obviously aspired to be the head coach, and he wanted the head coaching job whenever they hired Brown. I think he was very interested in the head coaching job. Obviously didn't get the shot, but very interesting to see a guy who's up and coming. And kind of we spoke about this in the offseason a little bit, me and you, is Zach Alley in waiting? Not to push Rich Rod out the door. We love Rich Rod. We want everything to do, but is that what they were planning here with bringing in a young head coach, kind of with a not going to say
room to grow
head coach? Yeah, a guy that's got room to grow and time. You know, he's young, really young coach.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. You know, that's down the line. Who knows how long Coach Rich Rod wants to give this thing a go, and you know, who's to say if he doesn't have some really good success in 2 years here and gets us to a Big 12 championship game or something like that, maybe he's ready to pass the torch on to Alley if he's ready to go at that point. But speaking more so of this upcoming year. I do like the fact that this will be Zach Alley calling the plays with Rich Rod maybe just in his ear with some suggestions here and there. I like the fact that he's going to live and die with the shots he calls. I think you'll at times maybe we'll see some mistakes, but that's the only way that he's going to grow as a true defensive coordinator calling his own shots. And I really think this guy is a talented, innovative young defensive mind. And I think he's going to have these guys flying around on defense, sideline to sideline, making plays.
Yeah, I think one thing that stood out to me when he was speaking today was he likes to keep offenses off. He doesn't want them to know what's coming to them before the game. Like, he wants something new, something different for these quarterbacks to see every game. And we know, just watching NFL quarterbacks, when they don't know what's across the line of scrimmage from them, when they can't, look at a defense and say, okay, this is cover 2 or this is cover 3, this guy's going to drop. When they can't do that, it makes the quarterback position so much harder, and it makes the offense kind of question, oh man, what do I do here? And then you get a big sack, or they throw the pass wrong, or a fumble happens. Just from what Zach Alley, I really expect this West Virginia defense to be a team that gets turnovers, that makes the other team turn the ball over.
It's hard to prepare for something that you don't see a lot on film, for sure. So, no, I think as far as Zach Alley, he didn't necessarily speak as much as Rich Rod, but I kind of let you put the finishing touches up on this episode. Overall, for me, just super excited. I'm glad to hear that nothing really negative coming from the press conference from both of these guys. They're obviously excited to really get in that practice atmosphere and see some competition and evaluate players, but excited to where this team can go, man. There's talent on both sides of the ball. I'm hoping Jaheim can and will stay and be a stud in this Rich Rod offense, but hopefully, we're not making a video on that for another day. So wrap us up,
Yeah.
Noah, whatever you got.
Yeah, just to close us out here, I think you kind of hit it there on kind of where I was going to go with it is, best of luck to Chad Scott. Really appreciate everything he's did for the Mountaineer program. Hope for all the success down in Texas, and maybe he gets a shot to be a coordinator, if not at Texas, at another program. Hope we keep Jaheim. Really excited to see what happens this spring, and you're going to see, I don't want people to shy away from the fact, come April, you're going to see some guys hop in the portal, right? It's obvious that it's going to happen because there's going to be some guys that clear ahead, and they're going to be the obvious starters. Some guys who thought they had the chance to be in that starting lineup, they don't get it. So no matter who you see go, whether it be Jaheim or whether it be a guy that you thought was going to be a very vital part of the team, keep level-headed into the season, because we got to trust that Rich Rod and Zach Alley know what they're doing. And from this presser, it makes me feel really confident in what they want to put together here for the West Virginia 2025-2026 season.
They have a vision. It's all about executing it. So,
vision.
guys, as always, appreciate you guys listening in. So, like, subscribe, and comment any video ideas or anything you guys want to hear us chopping up about. So, appreciate you guys as always.
Yes, sir. Like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate it, guys.